sharp and soft, holy and whole. For the woman ready to burn the scripts and choose full-bodied aliveness. I'm Lucy Ports. Welcome to Blossom and Blade. Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Blossom and Blade. I am really looking forward to sharing this conversation with you, which is all around my own experience and learnings of the modern Western healing culture or self-development culture or transformational culture, and some of the frustrations that I've experienced along the way, and some of the shadow sides of this culture, and of how I feel it can be quite limiting actually to the process of coming back into love and acceptance and wholeness with oneself, and also into full-bodied erotic aliveness, which is the purpose of everything that I do. In the last episode, I shared about my journey of self-pleasure as a practice and how I committed to 120 days of daily practice. If you haven't listened to that episode, go back and listen to it. But basically what I share in this episode is the incredible transformation that I facilitated for myself with the touch of my own hands inside of my own home, which is not something that I even really thought was possible, because there was this belief in me that someone else was going to facilitate the transformation for me, which is why I spent a lot of time searching for the answers and traveling the world and studying with so many different teachers, because I didn't know how to take myself into these states of deep connection, deep intimacy, connection with the sacred inside of me, which really, like, ultimately, that's what I was looking for, because that's what was really, really missing from my life. And so I guess what I want to share in this episode is the journey from seeking and knowing to embodying. And I want to share my own experience of having spent many, many years being facilitated into certain states and certain experiences versus learning how to facilitate myself into this remembrance of love inside of my own being. I feel really, really passionate about this, and I feel like, especially for women, it's such a big piece of reclaiming our own inner authority, our own leadership, as opposed to kind of relying and depending on being led and being guided by others. Let it be the guru, the teacher, the partner, the course, the psychedelic journey, whatever it might be, but kind of placing this power, this potency of our own inner oracle and wisdom somewhere outside of ourselves. And what I'm going to share about is the journey back into that through the path of practice, embodied erotic pleasure practice. What I'm not saying by sharing all of this is that working with teachers and guides and mentors and being in group and being in containers is not valuable or not necessary. I've had some of the most kind of potent transformational and healing experiences in group, and I'm so deeply grateful for the incredible teachers that have supported me. And these are really kind of drops of remembrance, but it all comes down to, how do you integrate this into your own being? How do you devote yourself to actually embodying the knowing that you've gathered from these experiences in the mundane day-to-day moments of your life, at work, being with your family, just going about your normal life outside of the therapy session, the ceremony, the retreat, breath to breath, moment to moment. How do you do that? And so this is what I want to share about. And I want to start by sharing just my own kind of intense frustration that I felt on my healing journey. And maybe some of you can, relate to this point. If you're listening to this, you probably can. But this feeling of like, I've done the work. I've done it. I've invested time, I've invested money, I've invested energy. I have studied, I have learned, I have shadow hunted, I have, dug up the the deepest, darkest corners of my psyche in order to understand my attachment system, my trauma, the way that my parents' behaviors have imprinted on me, generational trauma, cultural trauma, the many layers of conditioning that I have been exposed to. I get it. I understand it. I could write you an entire book, probably with like 3 different volumes, to sketch out the history of why today I am who I am, right? With all of the struggles and all of the gifts. With that, I felt like I came to a point where I was like, okay, I've got a really good understanding of why I freeze in this situation, why I collapse in this situation, why I leave myself in that situation, because I can tell you the exact moment that this thing happened when I was 3 years old. And I can explain why, I'm in this fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. And I can tell you the cues of it happening, I can really, I know it. Like, trust me, I bloody know it. And at the same time, it was like, okay, so I've got this script that kind of describes me. And yet it feels like while I want something else for myself in my life, I am actually bound by this script. I am limited by the behaviors, the somatic shapes that I find myself in, the way that my body kind of reacts. Although in my mind, I know that I want to react differently, like maybe it's the way that you avert your eyes and kind of like your body contracts when someone pays you a compliment, or it's the way that you feel yourself slightly dissociate and leave yourself when you're trying to accommodate someone else. Maybe it's the way that like your jaw tightens and your belly clenches when you silence yourself when actually you want to speak. Especially in intimate relationships, especially in sexuality, I felt these limitations so much. And it was almost like I could see myself from the outside reacting in a certain way or not reacting, right? Like getting stuck in something. And then getting so angry and so frustrated with myself of like, I know better than this. How am I here again? How am I just like repeating the same pattern when I know I want to feel more free? I want to act in a more loving way. I want to be more assertive in the way that I hold myself. I want to really express my voice and my creativity, but something else comes in when I try, right? And so I felt like I was just kind of this person inside of a script that I didn't write. And I didn't know how to get out of it. What I'm describing is something that I know so many women are experiencing, which is the gap between our knowing of our own potential and the actual embodied reality, right? Like I I feel myself, and the versions that are possible for me, the future that is possible for me, And yet I am here feeling so stuck and so limited. How can that be? And this is something that I know so many women are experiencing, this gap between who I feel like I'm meant to be and who I currently am. And this feeling of like feeling bound, feeling limited, like not being able to move outside of the way that my body just does what it does, right? First of all, I just want to say that it's really normal that this happens. And I wish that someone had said that to me, you know, when I found myself kind of like in the peak of frustration, because this script, you know, the way that we have been brought up and socialized, and we have like begun to embody certain belief systems, it does live in our body. It doesn't just live in our mind, in our consciousness, but it lives in our tissues. It lives in our jaw, in our genitals, in our anus, in our breasts, in our belly, in the way that we breathe, the way that we speak, the way that we clench or hold or release our muscles, our posture. So understanding your patterns, your limitations, the way that you kind of limit yourself in letting more life and more love in is not the same as actually being free from those patterns. So the expansive and inclusive awareness you have of how much is possible for you is not embodied unless you practice this embodiment. And I guess just to give some like very practical examples of that, what I really noticed when I was like deep in the kind of culture of transformational group containers and courses and psychedelic journeys and ceremonies and therapy and coaching and mentoring, you know, while I still do all of these things, there was a time where I really went for it, you know, quite relentlessly, because I felt so frustrated. And part of my frustration was that I felt like I could go into these experiences and I could be sure that after a week at a retreat, or after a deep tantric bodywork session, or after a plant medicine ceremony, I would get access to something that I would describe as like my deep, intimate connection with the sacred, really embodied, where I felt like, this is what life is meant to feel like. This is what being in my body is meant to feel like. This is what, you know, just like really shining my heart forward, and yeah, having this experience of like, wow, vibrancy of life. This is what it's meant to be like, which is great, right? And then it's like the session or the retreat or the ceremony is over, and I could almost feel like, okay, I can maintain this connection to this aliveness, to this sacredness, to this love, this deep intimacy within myself. I could maintain it for a certain amount of time, and then I could almost watch this window of connection close again. And I could feel my old patterns come in again. It's almost like no, 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 the curtain would drop again, you know? And so that understandably made me feel really frustrated, because I didn't feel like I wanted to be dependent on these different experiences, you know, either dependent on ingesting certain substances, or, you know, I need to have a session with this guide in order to remember, or I need to like go and travel to this retreat. Again, all of these are amazing experiences, but I was like, this can't be it. This can't be it, that I can only access this frequency through entering the spaces of other people. And I feel like this is something which so many women are experiencing, especially in the current transformational culture of going somewhere and like blowing yourself open a bit, you know, because so many women, especially in regards to like our bodies and our sexuality, there's this thing of like, I want to feel more. I want to be fully open. I want to be sensitized to life again. I want to be able to receive. I want to be able to feel. I want to be able to express, right? And so it's like, oh, if I just do this course, if I just do this retreat, then I'll feel that way. And so often we work with a lot of intensity and also like a lot of pressure in order to blow our systems open to feel more. And so maybe some of you can relate to this, you know, the retreat junkies who have to like go and almost like get another fix, another ayahuasca ceremony, another container, another this, another that, another session, because they cannot maintain the shape, the somatic shape that they've been taken into during whatever the last transformational thing was. So we live in this culture, right, of like quick fixes, also of like spiritual bypassing, of like I can like expand my consciousness, but the body is slow, the body is ancient, the nervous system is ancient, you know, like we can do all of the quantum leaps that we want, but we can't really speed up the healing and the reshaping of our soma. It takes time, it takes practice, it takes repetition. This is where your own practice comes in, you know, where you are taking the updating of your somatic shapes into a daily devotional practice. And this cannot be replaced by any one-on-one therapy, by any group experiences, by any amount of, you know, number of ceremonies that you sit in. Nothing can replace your daily practice of integration. And I know that many women don't want to hear this because what I am also saying by saying that you are responsible for your own practice and your integration, I'm also saying no one's going to do it for you. No one is going to do it for you. And that hits somewhere really, really deep. And it was a potent transitional moment for me when I realized like no one else can save me, right? No one else can take on that responsibility for me. It's really down to me to cultivate a level of inner safety and sovereignty and self-holding and a deep well of love that I can tap into. That's the only thing that's going to take me where I want to go, and no one can do it for me. One of the shadow sides of the availability of so many amazing therapists and mentors and retreats and courses is also that I feel it can kind of enhance a lack of self-responsibility. As in like, oh, I'll just go and do this next thing. Or when I get to this retreat, then, you know, and this kind of constant like looking outside into the next experience. And with that, like, yeah, really enhancing this kind of shape of the damsel in distress, the victimhood consciousness, the collapse. And what can also be a part of this can be the entitlement, you know, of like, I don't want to do this. It's hard. I want someone else to do it and hold it, you know, I want someone else to come and rescue me, which is like deeply, deeply ingrained in the female psyche. The good news is that you have the privilege and the responsibility to take care of yourself. And you know, the bad news is like, yeah, there's challenges along this path of really coming into the fullest expression of your sovereignty and your power and your full and wide erotic aliveness. It's not an easy path, but it is really the only path if you do want to live life to the fullest. What comes with that, which is really the beauty of devoting yourself to your own practice, is that you are healing a lifetime and, you know, potentially many, many lifetimes of self-abandonment. This abandonment wound that we carry where, as women, we have learned to look outside of ourselves, to search for our other half, for, the knight in shining armor to come and save us from all of the misery in the world. This is the one to kind of pierce right through the heart, right? This illusion. So I'm speaking to you if you feel like you want more for yourself than what you currently feel able to live and embody. And I want to let you know that it's possible, because that's been very much my path. And I just want to go into the definition of practice a bit, because there is such incredible power in the simplicity of a practice. So if you imagine, the ways in which your body has learned to move, to contract, to open, to feel like the different shapes and postures, the different emotional signatures, and like how they express through your body, all of this has been learned. All of this has been learned by you copying and witnessing the transmission of your parents, the people around you that you grew up with, the kind of cultural ocean that you've swum in growing up. And it's amazing, no? Because everything that we learn can be unlearned. If you think about, you've had like hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of repetitions of a certain somatic shape that you hold. Of course, that somatic shape is not just going to disappear by you going to a few 1-week transformational retreats, Somatic transformation needs repetition and it needs practice. If you want to have a different embodied experience, this transformation happens through the body. It is the slow and often very clunky work of learning to move through the world in a different way. Watch any child that's learning to walk for the first time. It's not elegant, and I really encourage you, like when you enter your practice, which I hope you do after listening to this, really encouraging you to be so gentle with yourself and so compassionate, because learning something new through the body, it only happens through repetition. It only happens through being with the clunkiness of trying something different, of learning something new. And it happens with failing and making mistakes and falling over and, getting stuck somewhere. And this is the whole flex. You are creating different ways in which you relate to intimacy, to partnership, to love, to sexuality, to spiritual connection, to creativity, to money, through updating the unconscious embodied patterns that you are holding and that you have learned and repeated a gazillion times. Your practice space is a space where these patterns and these shapes can be brought into your awareness and they can be softened into. So it's not about needing to break through the pattern or dissolve it like that and push up against them. No. It's really about just like, look, and here I am clenching my jaw. And here I am with my shoulders kind of like all folded in and like making myself small. Okay. And I hold this part of me that is feeling tense, maybe scared. The part that maybe feels like if she is too much, she'll get exiled. Yeah, so this is the access point. And a self-pleasure practice is so incredibly potent as an embodiment practice, because in pleasure, we are the most vulnerable. We are the most raw, the most open, the most deeply feeling. Our defenses are down. This is what happens when we bring pleasure to the body. So everything that has braced, like everything that's been holding, can begin to vibrate open. And so self-pleasure practice is a way to meet all of these exiled parts of yourself and to include them, to bring them into your own compassionate embrace. And this is how transformation happens. It's not by like blasting through, because we don't want to leave parts of ourselves behind. And so by really including our parts of ourselves and bringing them into coherence, we need to experience ourselves deeply in our fear, our terror, our grief, our rage, our desires, our arousal, our disconnection and numbness. All of these are portals. Women's bodies open to pleasure and feel alive when they feel deeply loved. And deep love happens through inclusion, through acceptance. And so in your practice, it's just you. It's just you loving you, including all parts of you. And it's not, but when I go to this thing then, or when I find this person then, like, no, now. Loving yourself in your entirety, in your wholeness, now. And with that, I just want to normalize the pain points that I feel every single woman deals with in some way or the other, of feeling overwhelmed, feeling like we've abandoned ourselves, disassociating, freezing, overwhelm, drowning in the intensity of our emotions, feeling like it's too much, feeling like it's not enough. Like normalizing these pain points and also offering a different view, especially when approaching an embodied erotic practice, a deeply intimate pleasure practice. It can feel like my body is betraying me, right? It can feel like that in intimacy and in sexuality with others. Like, but I want to be here and I want to be open and I want to receive my partner, or I really want to feel connected. I really want to feel loved. I really want to feel satiated and content and inspired and alive, but I don't. So again, this can feel like my body is betraying me. My body is not doing what I want her to do, right? I really want to offer a reframe of this, of all of these moments of you meeting numbness, of you meeting freeze or contraction or like the too much. All of these are portals into deeper love, into deeper intimacy, into more aliveness. They are not limitations. And they are not problems to fix, but they are little messages to listen to. Because all of these somatic shapes and these physical expressions of your history and your emotional landscape are there for a reason, you know? So actually, nothing needs fixing because nothing is broken. And we don't need to, you know, try and force our way through these physical experiences. But what we do need to do is to listen and to bring these parts into acceptance. And so it's not really about like, how do I quickly feel as much as I possibly can feel? It's not about like forcing the door open, but it's really around the question of like, what conditions does my body actually need to feel safe enough to reveal my aliveness underneath whatever it is that it's blocking. It's not about trying to overcome these old shapes that we might understandably feel quite trapped in, but it's about creating a space, and this is your practice, where you are giving yourself permission to open into new shapes, because you're creating enough safety, enough slowness, and you are slowly learning to trust yourself more and more so new shapes can arise. And with these new shapes arising, you naturally increase your capacity for flexibility, for fluidity. You're opening up into more range in your body. Maybe you're seeing other women, you know, like on the dance floor or You're witnessing friends and you're like, oh, I wish I could be this free in my body. I wish I could feel this juicy and confident. I wish I could speak my voice like her. And so in your practice, in the safety of you being your own witness, you can play with these shapes. And this is it, we need like a safe experimental ground in order to allow ourselves to play with the clunkiness, of inhabiting something else that is perhaps more expressive, more daring, more raw, more wild, more feral, more confident than the current version of yourself. I want to come back to what I was sharing in the beginning of this is something that other people can support you with for sure. And I feel like especially seeing other women's transmissions and feeling their embodiment is so important. But no one can teach you how you do this, how you expand and fully drop into the full expression of your erotic aliveness. This is something that is unique to the way that your nervous system was shaped, to the way that your beliefs were shaped. And so having a self-pleasure practice is really learning to meet your body in all seasons, which is not something that you can do really with anyone else. You are with yourself during all parts of your cycle, doing all parts of the iterations and chapters of work and relationships and life. And there's such a beautiful opportunity to become so deeply intimate with yourself and tending to your own garden. This body is no different to the forest, the ecosystem, the natural landscape that we are inhabiting. And what you tend to grows. Like tending to your own garden is a devotional, steady practice of repetition, of listening and of caring. And again, this is what you do in your own practice. And it's something that over time just becomes more refined, more joyful, because your garden just grows to be more and more abundant. And again, what a privilege and a beautiful thing that is to tend to a beautiful garden of your body and your heart, your spirit, your consciousness, and making sure that you feel both in alignment and also in vibrant aliveness with the way that you're connecting to the world. As you are tending to your garden, of course, you will be confronted with the parts of yourself that you would rather not feel, the parts which you are dismissing, and you're going to have to really stretch yourself and expand your capacity to include all of you. And that can bring discomfort and it can bring intensity. I truly believe that there is nothing that's anywhere as confronting as your own self-pleasure practice. Apart from, of course, being in an intimate romantic relationship, which is kind of the same practice, just with another person. But there's something around building this deep intimacy within yourself and welcoming all parts of you home through your body, through the touch of your hands, and moving out of this kind of mindset that I need to fix, and in order to fix, I need to do X, Y, Z, but rather like, I get to listen, I get to tend, I get to nourish. And I hope that I could kind of give an example of how slow, how subtle, and also how deep this work is. And also why regular practice matters, why integration matters, how the things that you learn are actually becoming embodied. And this is how true sustainable transformation happens. Where the body becomes the teacher and where you are in so much attunement and exchange and sensitivity with yourself that you can let yourself be guided by your intuition, by your impulses, and you can let this part within you, which is eternal, maybe you want to call it your soul or like the spark of your divinity, you can let that shine through. You can actually listen to it because you are no longer limited by the conditioning, the embodied beliefs and habits and patterns which are holding you back from really being in the fullest expression of your being. I mean, your soul incarnated in this body for a reason, right? And if you feel like you have more to give to the world, I can guarantee you that you're right, because your desires are your North Star. If you're longing for something, if you're yearning for something, if you feel like this can't be it, there's more, you are absolutely right. And you don't have to accept these limitations, because through practice, you can expand what is currently possible for you. And this is something that I share from my own experience. I don't just say this in a very like idealized way, but having a history of sexual abuse, of very intense childhood attachment trauma, of a very limited relationship to money, a deep abandonment wound, an inability to have healthy relationships because I never had it modeled to me. This was my history, right? And here I am in a beautiful partnership, sharing my purpose, running a very successful and financially abundant business, and feeling so deeply at home and alive in my body when I spend the majority of my life feeling disconnected and hating myself and hating my body and having no access to joy or even the will to really be here. So I want to just share with you like the stark contrast, right? And what has brought me here is this practice, which is why I will not stop sharing so passionately about it, because again, I feel like, you know, it's the closest thing to a magic pill that I've found. It doesn't work like a magic pill in the sense of like, you gotta take it every single day and you gotta spend time every day to devote yourself and dedicate yourself. But with repetition, with practice, with curiosity, with devotion, with a willingness to be clunky and awkward and learn new things, everything is possible. And this for me is the biggest gift that I've received in this lifetime, which is why I'm sharing it. And so if this touches something in you, and maybe you are at a stage where you're feeling there's limitations and you've got deep knowing of yourself, but it hasn't quite translated into your embodiment, I guess I just want to remind you, maybe you don't need to know more and seek more and learn more and find out more and improve more. Maybe you just need to practice to actually begin to embody everything that you already know. And having this practice as a way of slowly and honestly and with devotion, create a space for your body until it trusts you enough to release those old shapes, to release this old armor. And I also want to remind you that this idea that someone else, some other teacher knows better how to connect with your own body, how to connect with your own erotic aliveness, is bullshit. And it pays into the culture of disempowerment and outsourcing of your own power. Your oracle, the oracle of your body, knows, and it matters that you spend time to connect with this knowing in order to allow your body to come into greater harmony, into more abundance, into more overflow. This is your unique connection to the sacred, and this is you filling out your full potential. In the way that I teach the self-pleasure practice, I don't teach you to get from A to B, but I support you in creating the space for you to explore X, Y, Q, Z, and then back to the beginning, B, and you know, the chaos of you actually finding your own way. If you feel a call to explore this more deeply, then check out my offering, Blossom and Blade, in the show notes. And I love to hear what this episode touched in you. Feel free to drop me a message, leave a comment, and I'm looking forward to the next conversation. Sending you much love. Mwah.